Hello everybody, it's TannerFishies here, back again with a new Ninjago video here on the channel. In today's video, we are back on tiermaker.com to rank and compare and contrast all of the Ninjago bad guys, or at least most of them. This is not every single Ninjago villain that has ever existed ever throughout the series, but I did get a fair amount. All of the, I guess, main ones that I could think of off the top of my head. I have most certainly missed some villains here. This is not everybody. However, this is a fair amount. This is a pretty decent amount right here, and I figured today we would rank them in this tier list according to my own opinion. I will leave this tier list down below in the description as a link if you guys wanted to do this tier list for yourself. But in terms of the tiers right here, we have perfect, amazing, decent, meh, bad, and terrible. Perfect being the best and terrible being the worst, obviously. As mentioned, this is all according to my own opinion, so don't get too mad at me, and we have a lot of villains to go through here. So let's get started with Garmadon himself. He is the first one. Garmadon I really enjoy. In fact, he's probably going to go in the perfect tier. I think Garmadon is an excellent villain all around. Every single form of him is hilarious. I love Garmadon as a character, so perfect to say the least. Next up we have Samakai. Samakai is admittedly kind of a meh villain. I appreciated the time that we actually had him on screen, but he didn't really leave that big of an impact. Of course, being one of Ninjago's first bad guys, he is pretty iconic. Cruncha, I'm going to have to put in the same category. Not a huge fan of Cruncha, though he is a lot better than his good pal Knuckle over here, who is just bad to me. Not really a huge fan of Knuckle. I greatly prefer Cruncha and even Samakai. Next up, Pythor. Pythor is a pretty good villain, I must say. One of the better Serpentine. I'm gonna have to put him in amazing. I think he's a pretty amazing bad guy. Not as good as Garmadon, but still good nonetheless. Pythor is also very iconic. Scales is decent. I like Scales quite a bit. He's a good leader of the Hypnobrai tribe, and he was a fairly, I guess, decent villain during the time in Ninjago that he was a villain. Nowadays, he's more of an ally to the ninjas, same with the rest of these snake guys. Acidicus is, not Scalador. Acidicus is alright, or at least meh in my opinion. Not super into Acidicus. I like his design though. We just don't really know a whole lot about his personality. Same deal with these two. Scalador I'm not super big on. He could probably go in the bad section. Same with Phantom. Not really too huge on these two generals. I greatly prefer Acidicus and obviously Scales. The Great Devourer is pretty decent. He's a very intimidating bad guy, of course. Doesn't really have a whole lot of personality though. However, he is very important to the Ninjago story, hence why he's in the decent category. The Overlord is already perfect in my opinion. I love the Overlord. I think the Overlord is one of Ninjago's greatest villains, definitely on par with Garmadon in my opinion. The Overlord needs to return at some point. The Giant Stone Warrior is I'd say meh. He's pretty cool. I liked the episode that he was in, but he didn't really leave that big of an impact in my opinion. We see him occasionally in the background though, so that's something. Kozu, on the other hand, I like a lot more. Gonna have to put him in the decent villains category. I like Kozu. I think he's awesome. I like his design. His Day of the Departed design is a lot better than his original design in my opinion. Then we have Cryptor. Cryptor, in my opinion, is a pretty amazing bad guy. I like the Ninjroids. I think they're awesome, and Cryptor being the leader of the Ninjroids, he's pretty cool. Mindroid is also pretty amazing. Not perfect, but I really like Mindroid being the comic relief. Of course, being the Ninjroid that was built using spare parts, I really appreciate Mindroid as a character. Master Chen, though, is iconic. Perfect villain in my opinion. I love Master Chen, easily one of my favorite Ninjago bad guys. Then we have Klaus. Klaus is also pretty good, but not as good as Chen in my opinion, so I'm going to put Klaus in the amazing section. I feel like Klaus should totally make a comeback at some point though. Moro. Moro is loved by a lot of Ninjago fans. I also think he's pretty cool, but not my favorite, so I'm going to put him in amazing. I think he's a fairly good villain for sure, but obviously not as good to me as some of these other ones up here. The Preeminent is still a pretty decent villain, sort of like the Great Devourer equivalent, I guess, for the ghosts. I mean, big massive threat without a personality, sounds a lot like the Great Devourer, but a pretty decent villain to say the least. I liked the Preeminent when it was in the Ninjago series. Gultar is going to be the first terrible Ninjago villain. I do not like Gultar as a character. I think he's really stupid, not only in terms of intelligence, intelligence, but also in terms of a character. I really just do not like Gultar all that much. Wraith. This is Wraith, correct? Wraith we didn't really see too much of, so I'm going to have to put him in the bad section. Don't really know a whole lot about Wraith personally. Soul Archer, though, is a very good bad guy. Almost on par with Moro. I love Soul Archer. Going to have to put him in the decent category. Bansha is also okay, but not super great. Not as good as Soul Archer, but not as terrible as Wraith or Gultar, so maybe Bansha can go in the meh category. Look at that. We have a ghost in every category, except perfect, of course. Nauticon, though, Nauticon's going to go in perfect. I like Nauticon a lot more than Moro or Klaus or even Pythor. A very good addition to the Ninjago villain lineup for sure. Then we have Nauticon's crew, starting with Clancy. Clancy's a pretty good character. I'm going to put him in decent, actually. I really like Clancy as a character. I think he's awesome. Doubloon is also pretty cool. I really liked how he could use Spinjitzu. That much was really fun about his character. Flintlock is also pretty good. Gonna have to put him in the decent section as well. Lots of Sky Pirates in the decent category. I really like Flintlock, though. Could make for an excellent leader. The Monkey, Monkey Wretch or whatever his name is, I'm not super big on. Probably going to put him in the bad section. Not super into Monkey Wretch's character. Same with Dogshank. Might put her in the meh section, honestly. I liked Dogshank enough when she was, of course, on screen, but not a huge fan of her character. Master Yang, I also don't like. Going to put him in the terrible section. I think he's a pretty awful two-dimensional bad guy. Then we get into the Hands of Time, starting with Crux right here. Crux is pretty cool, honestly. I like Crux a lot. Might actually put him in the decent section as well. I think Crux is a very phenomenal Ninjago bad guy. Acronix, though, I like a little more, so I'm going to put Acronix in amazing. I think Acronix is the better twin over Crux for sure. General Makia. Not too crazy about Makia. Might put her in the... Oh, wrong one. Might put her in the bad section. Meant to grab Makia right here. Yeah, not a huge fan of any of these Vermilion warriors. Who's this? Ragmonk or whatever? Or which one is which? I can never remember which one's Ragmonk and which one's Blunk or whatever his name is. Tell you what, they're both terrible, so they're going to go in the terrible section. I'm not super crazy about any of the Vermilion warriors. By the way, tell me which one's which in the comment section down below. Harumi, I need to be very careful about where I put Harumi. Lots of Ninjago fans' favorite character. I'm honestly going to put her in amazing. She's not my favorite villain, though. Not as good as these four up here, but still very good. Harumi was a very good character, very deep, lots of emotional depth going on with this character right here. Kilo, I'm not a huge fan of. Kilo can go in bad, honestly. Mr. E is really cool. Gonna have to put Mr. E in amazing as well. One of the most iconic Sons of Garmadon characters for sure. Ultraviolet is pretty meh, I'd say. I think there's a lot that they could do with that character that they choose not to, so not super crazy about Ultraviolet, but she's still fun when she's around. She's fun in small doses. How about that? Iron Baron, I do not like. I really do not like the Iron Baron. One of my least favorite parts about Hunted for me. Gonna have to put Iron Baron in the terrible section. The Omega is kind of a disappointing villain. He was cool when he was on screen, but he didn't really have that much of a personality, so I'm gonna put him in meh. Nowhere near as intimidating as somebody like the Overlord, that's for sure. In my opinion, the Oni were pretty disappointing, and the Omega is the leader of the Oni, obviously, so gonna have to put him in meh. Esphira, not too great. I liked her motivation, but it is very cliche, and there's not a lot of unique attributes about her character. Certainly not enough to put her above any of these other guys up here. Next up, we have General Vex. Not my least favorite character ever. Gonna have to put him in meh. I liked how he manipulated Zane. Speaking of which, down here we have Zane himself, the Ice Emperor. A fairly decent Ninjago bad guy, I'd say. Gonna have to put him in the decent section. Next up, we have Boreal. Another one of those mindless monsters. Not as fun, though, as the Preeminent or the Devourer, so I'm going to have to put Boreal in bad, honestly. I like the design, though. The design is excellent for that dragon. Unagami is a pretty one-note villain as well. Unagami, honestly, I liked his backstory. I liked his motivation change towards the end of his season, so maybe I'll put him in meh, actually. He's not my favorite villain ever, but he's still good, I suppose. He's still a pretty average Ninjago bad guy. The Skull Sorcerer is a pretty amazing character. Gonna have to put him in the amazing section. I really like the Skull Sorcerer. I love his motivation. motivation, I love his design, and the creepy skull that he carries around with him, that's just gorgeous. I love the design of this guy. Griefbringer, who's been here the whole time, no need to go back and look, totally did not forget about him until just now and quickly edited him in this tier list. No, I would never do that. That being said, Griefbringer's on the same level as Boreal for me, but I like the design a little more, so maybe I'll put him in meh. Yeah, Griefbringer will go in the meh section. Who do we got next? Chief Mamatis. Not really a villain, but still maybe an antagonist, I guess. As characters go, though, he is fairly average, so probably going to put him in the meh section as well. Kalmar is a very good bad guy. Seabound's villain. I'm going to have to put him in the amazing section as well. I really enjoyed Kalmar's character. Easily one of the best modern-day Ninjago villains, right next to the Skull Sorcerer, I would say. Wajira is much like the Devourer, so Wajira is going to be going in the same tier as the Devourer and the Preeminent. Another mindless monster, but I really like Wajira's design. That is that's a very neat design, I must say. Fugidove, everybody's favorite Ninjago bad guy. Gonna have to put him in the meh category. He's alright, but I wish he got a little more attention. The Mechanic is a fairly decent villain, another recurring Ninjago bad guy. I'd say the Mechanic deserves to be in the decent section alongside some of these other characters. To me, the Mechanic is on the same level as somebody like Doubloon or even Ice Emperor Zane. So yeah, the Mechanic goes here. Ronin, you could argue, is not a bad guy, but Ronin has done a lot of really bad things, and as a character, Ronin to me is pretty decent. He's not the best, not the worst either. He's kind of inconsistent though, so I can't really put him any higher than what I've put him right here. He deserves to be in the decent section, I would argue. Captain Soto, another character that you could argue is not really a villain, but Soto to me is a pretty meh character. I'm not super into his character or his pirate crew. Misdemeanor, I wish we could see more of her. She's really cool. But from what we can see right now, I'm going to put her in the meh section because we don't know a whole lot about her. But I love her design and I love her personality. So easily a meh Ninjago villain for me. In other words, meh is kind of like the average section, I'd say. We have Tannerbrax. I really like Tannerbrax. I like him a lot more as a character than some other of these Ninjago villains, that's for sure. I'm going to put him in the decent section. Tannerbrax is a very intimidating villain with some really cool motivations and some excellent technology and some really cool and really scary puppetry. I really enjoyed Tannerbrax in the Spinjitzu Brothers books. Speaking of which, we have Nineko. Nineko is a really fun character. I like her design. I really like her design a lot. I like her personality as well. I'd probably put her on par with Tannerbrax. Alright, next up here we have Young Lloyd. Not a Ninjago villain, technically, I know, but he started the series as a bad guy, quote-unquote bad guy. And as a bad guy, Young Lloyd was a pretty decent villain, I'd say. He did a lot to, I guess, give the ninja trouble, so I'll give him that much for credit, though he did turn good fairly quickly, so I can't really put him much higher. And then we have Evil Master Wu. I love this design for Wu. Evil Wu, Tech Wu, however you want to say his name, whatever you want to call him. He was pretty good, all things considered, so I'm going to put him in the decent section, honestly. A very cool part of Ninjago rebooted. And with that being said, you guys, that'll pretty much do it for this Ninjago tier list right here, ranking all of the Ninjago villains, or at least most of them. I apologize if I missed any of your favorite bad guys. Like I said, this is as many as I could think of off of the top of my head, of course. So for perfect, we have these four. I really like these four Ninjago villains, and then you can see in descending order how I feel about pretty much all of these bad guys. Not a lot in terrible. Most of these guys ended up in the decent category. So this is the decent category. So whatever that says, I guess that's good. Ninjago's got a lot of decent bad guys. With that being said, though, guys, thank you so much for checking out this video of me ranking all of these Ninjago villains on this tier list. I will leave a link to this tier list down below in the description in case you guys want to do this for yourself. And in the meantime, once again, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of my list, and hopefully you enjoyed today's video. If you did, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and check out the links down below in the description from other forms of social media. As always, big shout out goes out to my Patreon supporters, including once again the Marvelous Jan. Thank you guys so much for checking out today's video. Once again, my name is TannerFishies, and with that I bid you farewell.